whose knowledge is it that really counts in planning? So my name is Johanna Palomäki, and I work as planning manager in the planning department of the city of Espoo in the general strategic planning unit. And our task a lot of times is producing background knowledge, background information and data for various planning tasks, both the strategic level planning tasks of the city and also for the detailed planning. And Maptionnaire is a good tool for gathering experiential knowledge of citizens that we planners would not have access to easily in any other way except talking with the citizens in workshops and different events. But with Maptionnaire, we can reach many more people. My personal philosophy in planning is that I want us to be making cities for people together with the people themselves. Their knowledge counts as an important part of the background information that we use in planning. And here we, with Marit, we envisioned a little bit of the sort of problematics, what there is in planning and participatory planning particularly. The usual problem is that there's only a few people that participate in events. Just last night, we had a public presentation of a plan, and there were 40 people present in that event. And the phase of participation was quite late, and some people were there for the first time in that process, and they probably will feel a bit disappointed that we are not able to take into account their ideas as well as if they had been able to participate earlier on in the process. And the problem is that we do give these opportunities for participation, but we just don't reach enough people. That's the issue. But with Maptionnaire, it's easier to reach large amounts of people because people can participate whenever they want, wherever they want on their devices, as Festa explained. Then the other issue is that people's knowledge is very hard to translate into planning outcomes when you are conversing with people in a live situation. How do you translate that into planning solutions? And with digital tools like Maptionnaire, it's easier to make people's knowledge count and integrate that knowledge into complex planning processes where we use multiple knowledges, not just the people's knowledge, but also expert knowledge in combining, overlaying different kinds of knowledge. And I will show you a few examples in my presentation. So this is the traditional way that we gather knowledge in public events, for example, that we ask people to write down their comments on paper. And I believe these kind of events, they can still be relevant these days. The world is not completely digital. So I think we still need these one-to-one encounters with people and even taking notes of their comments and so on. But we simply don't have resources to engage thousands of people in this way. So if we want to have more people involved, we need better tools. And this year in Espoo, no, actually last year in Espoo, from August to October, we had open a citywide map questionnaire with Maptionnaire that was called My Espoo on a Map. And this was done together with the research group at Aalto that Festa also mentioned. So that part of the survey was a random sample survey, and part of it was open, that the city publicized on our social media channels and on our websites and through our marketing channels. And a third part of the same survey was directed directly to schools. So children aged 10 to 12 and high school children and secondary education children, or young adults replied to the survey. And the result was that 6,600 people mapped 70,000 places on the map Espoo has just under 300,000 inhabitants at the moment, but you can already see that if you do a random sample survey and you get 1,000 replies, you already have a good data set on your hands. So we have an absolutely amazing data set on our hands. The Aalto researchers said that they have not heard of any data set this big before. So now we have the great responsibility to translate this knowledge into planning outcomes and sorry, I seem to have an animation there. Be responsible because people have spent time answering the survey. As you saw Festa presented, there was just one question. Our survey, I think, had 5 or 6 pages in it. And I talked to some people who had taken this survey, and they said that it took up to an hour to reply to all the questions. So you can imagine the amount of work that has gone into producing this map. So we have to be very responsible that we do efficient analysis and that we really translate this knowledge into real planning outcomes during the coming years. So the first thing that we have done is that we employed a young architect that was working for us to do preliminary visualizations of the sort of first feel of the large material. We browsed through the material, not scientifically, but just to get a feel of what it looks like at first hand. And then he made 6 visualizations like this in total that we can market back to the people as sort of an after marketing effort to tell the respondents of the first results of the questionnaire. And we are now in this phase. The questionnaire has a web page on the city's web page. There is a separate web page dedicated to this topic, and we are as we get results, we are all the time publicizing them back to the people to tell them where we're at and how their knowledge is being used. So this was sort of like a marketing effort to let people immediately know what we are doing with the results. And then the research group at Aalto University within funded research project called Nordgreen. They have also a web page. If you are more interested, you can find that by Googling. They are doing this kind of development prioritization model based on the data that we have found. And I will not go any deeper into this, but this is the kind of analysis that you can do with the data that we have and translate this knowledge on a map into these kind of prioritization categories. And already at this stage, even though we have not gone any deeper, we already are finding out some indications that people have marked their favorite places and their everyday places in the survey on the map. And we have found that they often coincide, these different categories of places where there are this, for example, this development priority. It indicates that there's something wrong with the place and that we need to improve it somehow. And then these yellow markings indicate that there is room for improvement on the viewpoint of the respondents. And then when you overlay these different categories on the same map, you again see that a lot of them coincide. And we see that, for example, the seashore in Espoo seems to be a place that the Espoo residents value a lot, where they go for recreation reasons and where they find their favorite places. But then also very interesting clusters of places. This cluster there where there are a lot of orange and blue and green dots in the same place is one of our urban cores, and of course gives us view that there might be something that we need to look into deeper in this. and shows you also that this data set you can use on different levels of planning. You can look at these sort of citywide heat maps and draw general results from it, but then you can also zoom in into certain neighborhoods or certain urban cores, and then you can zoom in right into the unique points and see what that person has replied, the raw data from it. You can use that on many levels. And here are just some ideas that the researchers have that they will be doing scientific articles on, and may be relevant to the Health&Greenspace research topic that we are gathered around today. For example, what is the effect of green spaces on people's everyday life, health and well-being, since we can take from these point analysis the green areas, and then in the background questions there were some questions about people's experienced health and well-being, and we can do cross-analysis on those. So then, of course, alone this data does not give us much information for planning, but we need to overlay it with other data sets and other knowledge that we have to achieve positive change in our city. So we have ideas that we are developing now, that we would like to overlay the PPP GIS data set, for example, with different urban typologies that we have done with GIS before. So that another very extensive GIS study that we have done at the city of Espoo, and it would be very interesting to add now this layer of experiential knowledge on this more sort of raw, expert data knowledge, and look how they translate with each other. Or I will be giving you an example of how we have treated ecosystem services in the city. How does this experiential knowledge enrich our expert knowledge of locally important ecosystem services, for example? Also a multi-criteria GIS study that we have done at the city. Or again, since we have been doing analysis on development potential of various areas, people have given their ideas of how to develop the city, then of course we would like to overlay that with our data of where the actual development potential in the city is. So people may have pointed that they feel that a certain area needs to be developed, it's run down or something. Then we need to take a look at whether there actually is potential. If for example, the condition of the infrastructure or the built environment is such that it needs refurbishing anyway. So how do we make people's knowledge count? What do we do with the data set other than analyzing it? A very important aspect is that this knowledge needs to be shared. As Festa explained, it's easy to analyze it in Maptionnaire, and it's very easy to do all these heat maps and do these GIS studies. But the very important next step is to distribute the knowledge. And we intend to do this. One way we intend to do this is by integrating it into our citywide GIS system, which at the city of Espoo is called Trimble Locus Cloud. It's the GIS system where all the register information, land ownership, all the official information of the city resides. Yes, city registrar, I think, is the right name. Where our current planning situation is, where all the information of our population is. So we intend to all the information on infrastructure and the green environment and so on. There are, I believe, around 500 or 600 different data sets in our GIS system in total. And we intend to incorporate this My Espoo on a Map dataset as one layer or one set of layers into the GIS system. So when planners are searching for background information for planning, this data set is one of the sort of normal data sets that they would take into account when they search for initial knowledge for planning. And here is just another feel of what it could be like when we transfer the knowledge from this. This is an actual example of not the survey My Espoo on a Map, but another map survey that we transferred from Maptionnaire to Trimble Locus Cloud, and you can present it there like this. And on the left you can see all in Finnish, but you can see that there are lots of different layers there, and then this Maptionnaire layer will be one layer that you can turn off and on among the other data. Then this makes it much easier to overlay this experiential knowledge with so-called hard data on infrastructure and other things. I was asked if I could tell a few words about how we have made a multi-criteria GIS analysis of ecosystem services in Espoo. And my colleague, landscape architect Heidi Algren, kindly gave me some slides on their project. And I will just shortly explain what we have done. This will be a very sort of scratching the surface kind of presentation, because I don't very deeply know the method behind how they have done it, but just to give you a feel of what you can do with various GIS tools, and then also vis-a-vis what Festa also presented, how you could use this kind of ecosystem service knowledge combined with experiential knowledge. Sorry, did somebody say something? No? Okay.
No, it was just a mistake.
Okay, no problem. Interrupt me if need be. So the basic sort of study question was that here we have picked two squares from the map of Espoo, which look pretty alike. If you sort of had to analyze the ecosystem services of each square, they would be pretty similar. But then when you zoom out from these squares, you immediately see that the ecosystem services of the square on the left versus the square on the right are quite different, because the picture on the left is close to an urbanized area and a lot of people live there, and it's a very accessible area, whereas the image on the right is in a more remote, rural, forested area, and nobody lives near there. And we all know that ecosystem services vary a lot based on the amount of sort of pressure of use on that area. And this was sort of the kind of viewpoint that our landscape architect had when she was doing this analysis. And just as examples of various criteria of ecosystem services that she took, or their team took and combined together to come up with the final multi-criteria analysis maps. We will not go to these in any depth, but you can just quickly see that there are issues of vegetation and rainwater, surface water runoff, and buffering residences, and multiplying that with trees, and seeing how the trees give protection to housing, and buffer from schools and kindergartens, and so on. And also the accessibility of the forested areas was taken into account. And with this kind of, they had many more of those categories. Those were just, those six previous maps were just examples. They had many more of those, because we all know that ecosystem services are a long list of things. So they took many of those into account, and then did these kind of, now I'm searching for the English word, but kind of different viewpoints of how to study the ecosystem services, evenly spread criteria, or looking at of the regional importance of the ecosystem services, or looking at the local nearby importance of the ecosystem services, and the map becomes a little different each time. And some of the results were that they found that in the locally important ecosystem services category, for example, the edges of large forest areas were very important, and the next door forest areas that are close to residences are important, or indeed forested areas next to streets and local small parks, seashores with trees, courtyards, street trees were found to be important. Yeah, by the way, the dark green, of course, means that it's an important ecosystem services, and the lighter areas are of less importance. So in conclusion, we believe that map-based tools, whether they be Maptionnaire or other GIS tools, enable us to do more inclusive city planning, because it's easier to integrate these data sets together. It's easier to gather the data, and it's easier to integrate them and make more efficient analyses. And by this method, we can do much better informed planning decisions, do evidence-based planning, so to say. And efficiently gathering, analyzing, and distributing the knowledge helps us to make sense of a very complex world that we live in planning a little bit better. So whose knowledge counts in planning? I believe everyone's knowledge counts, whether it's me as an expert planner, or a resident who lives in the area, a school kid, or a researcher at the university that we work with, or a water specialist, or a green area specialist, or whoever. With these digital tools, we can make everyone's knowledge count.